Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna apologize ahead of time. I meant to bring my strap for my head cam so you guys could watch my hands and see what my hands are doing, but unfortunately I left that at UHS, and I'm currently at my house right now. So what we're gonna do today, I'm gonna show you guys how to make your Rice Krispy treat recipe. As we mentioned in class, this recipe should be fairly quick, fairly simple. This is a great starter recipe for all of you. And when we're talking about food safety and sanitation, this recipe is a perfect one because of how sticky it is. As we start melting our marshmallows down, they're gonna kind of stick to everything. And so you'll have to be constantly washing your hands, and you'll get to practice good hand washing techniques. I will say this as a warning. I'm using a GoPro camera currently, and to control my GoPro, I'm using my phone. So if I'm looking down, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the recipe and I'm looking at my phone. Ideally, when you're cooking in the kitchen, your phone should be put away. Your phone, you touch that phone all the time. It's always in your pocket, it's always on the counter, it's always with you, and your phone is actually covered in germs. So whenever you're cooking, your phone should really be put away. The only reason I have it out is so I can control this camera right now. Typically, I'd have that phone put away at all times. So, first things first, I am gonna go ahead and start by washing my hands. And if you remember correctly, see here, hopefully you guys can see. When you're washing your hands, the whole hand washing process should take roughly 20 seconds at minimum. It could take longer. So it should take the time it takes you to sing the happy birthday song twice. So when you wash your hands, you want as hot of water as you can possibly stand it. Okay, so you want as hot as you possibly can stand it. If you use cold water, that's not gonna kill any germs that are on your hands. We all naturally have a lot of bacteria on our hands. So we wanna make sure that we have it as hot as possible. That way it'll kill off any germs, any bacteria that's on our hands. So I'm gonna start by getting my hands wet. I'm then gonna get some soap on my hands. Start lathering them up. I'm gonna scrub in between my fingers, in between my nails. Okay, don't forget my thumb. A lot of times we scrub in between scrub our nails and we forget our thumbs. Okay, and we also want to make sure we get in between our fingers really well. A lot of times we get just the palms of our hands and forget about the tops of our hands. Okay. Tops of our hands are just as dirty as our palms of our hands. Once I get a nice good lather, get plenty of soap everywhere, I'm gonna rinse them off. Once again, continuing that in between scrubbing my nails, in between my fingers. And then I'm gonna try to turn the faucet off, if I can, with either my arm or a paper towel or some other sort of towel. Okay? To dry my hands, I am not just gonna shake them all over to get them dry. And I'm not gonna dry them off on my shirt or on my pants, okay? My shirt and my pants, both are gonna have a lot of germs on them. They're gonna be very dirty. I'm gonna use a clean, dry towel, or I'm gonna use a paper towel. If we were in the foods lab at school, we would be using paper towels. Here at home, I'm gonna use a clean, dry hand towel that I have, okay? So that's what I'm gonna use to dry my hands off with today. All right. Now that I have my hands all nice and clean, I'm gonna go ahead and start getting everything I need for my recipe ready. It says for my recipe here, I need half a stick of butter, or roughly 3 to 4 tablespoons of butter. So my sticks of butter, we've not talked about measurements just yet, but my sticks of butter are measured out in tablespoons. Each little marker here is 1 tablespoon. Okay, so I've counted out 1, 2, 3, 4 tablespoons. You're gonna need 1, 2, 3, either this line, to 4 tablespoons of butter, so roughly half a cup of butter, to make your Rice Krispy treats. You're also gonna use 1 10-ounce bag of marshmallows and 6 cups of Rice Krispie Treat cereal. So I've got one 10-ounce bag of mini marshmallows. Some of you might be using the larger size marshmallows, and that's okay. I'm using mini marshmallows just because they melt a lot faster than the larger ones, but the regular size ones are perfectly fine as well. And then I have my box of Rice Krispies here, my Rice Krispie cereal. Those of you that are familiar with Rice Krispie cereal will notice that this is a different flavor. Okay? They are out of normal Rice Krispies at Meijer today. So my husband bought me some cookies and cream Rice Krispie cereal. So we're gonna try out a cookies and cream Rice Krispie Treat flavor. If you have a different flavor of Rice Krispie cereal you wanna try out, you're more than welcome to do that. Okay? Those of you that are picking up ingredients at the high school, you're gonna have your regular Rice Krispies. But if you're making them at home and you wanna pick out a cool flavor like this, or maybe some holiday ones that are kind of colored, you're more than welcome to do that. Okay, I will not stop you. All right, so as we mentioned in class, once I have my ingredients all ready here, we're going to melt our butter, melt our butter or margarine. So we're gonna melt our butter and marshmallows in a pan over medium heat, stirring with a wooden spoon. Okay, so I have a wooden spoon here that I'm gonna use. If you do not have a wooden spoon, you are more than welcome to use a rubber spatula, okay? Or some other sort of spoon. I will warn you, I do not recommend using a metal spoon. The reason for this is that as you're heating up your marshmallows, that spoon is gonna get really, really hot as you're stirring it, and you have a good chance of burning yourself. So I recommend using a wooden spoon or some sort of rubber spatula, okay? Once our butter and marshmallows are melted, we're gonna add 3 cups of Rice Krispies. Notice we have 6 cups in total we have to measure out, but we're only gonna add 3 cups at the very beginning, okay? The reason for that is that if we try to add them all at once, we're not gonna get the Rice Krispie cereal coated very well. So we're gonna go ahead, we're only gonna add half of it at a time. We're then going to pour our Rice Krispie Treats into a 9 by 12 or 9 by 13 cake pan or brownie pan, whatever you wanna call these. These are cake pans, but some of you might refer to these as brownie. Okay, my apologies guys. The camera ran out of storage, so I had to delete some videos. So now we're back. Where we left off, we were talking about the actual preparation of this recipe. And we were talking about we need 6 cups of Rice Krispie Treat cereal, but we're only gonna add 3 at a time. And then we started talking about our 9 by 12 cake pan, okay? So we're gonna pour, once we get our butter and marshmallows melted and we get our Rice Krispies coated, or Rice Krispie cereal coated, we're gonna pour that into a 9 by 12 cake pan. This cake pan, or this brownie pan, you might call it, should have already been buttered or sprayed down ahead of time. Okay. That way our Rice Krispie Treats don't stick to the pan. All right, so this pan should look something like this. You might have a metal one, I have a glass one. If you don't have one that's this exact size, that's okay. If you use one that's a little bit smaller, that's just gonna make your Rice Krispie Treats thicker, okay? This size is gonna make them a nice little portion size for everybody. So what I'm gonna do, you are more than welcome to take a stick of butter and butter your pan, or you can take non-stick cooking spray and spray it as well. So I am gonna go ahead and I'm gonna spray my non-stick cooking spray. Just a nice little coat to make sure things don't stick. And I'm gonna do that ahead of time before I even start melting my butter and my marshmallows. That way I don't forget later. Okay? I'm also gonna take this non-stick cooking spray and I'm gonna leave it sitting out here. If you chose to butter your pan instead of using the non-stick cooking spray, I would highly recommend leaving some butter out as well. Because like I said, this recipe gets really sticky. And so to help make sure the Rice Krispie Treats, the marshmallows and Rice Krispies don't stick to your hands, I'm gonna use that later. I'm gonna spray my hands with it to help make sure they don't stick. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna start off using some sort of saucepan. I have a large stock pot here that I'm using, but some sort of pot, some sort of pan on your stove top, you're gonna melt your butter, your half a cup of butter. All right. I suggest the larger the pot, the better. The reason for that is because once I start mixing all those Rice Krispies in there, if you have a smaller saucepan that you're using, a smaller pot that you're using, you're not gonna have very much space to mix everything together, and you're gonna have Rice Krispies cereal flying everywhere. So, as I am melting my butter, okay, you can see it's starting to melt right now. I'm gonna have my stove on a medium to kind of medium-low heat. Okay, might turn it up a hair, about medium heat. I don't want to turn this up all the way on high. I know that turning this up all the way on high will help my butter melt a lot faster, but when I start adding my marshmallows in here, it's gonna cause my marshmallows to burn. So I don't want my marshmallows to burn. It's gonna give my Rice Krispies an off flavor. They're gonna come out really dry and they're not gonna be very good. So I wanna make sure I have it on a medium heat. Okay, got that nice medium heat going. And I know it's gonna take a little bit longer, but patience is key with this recipe. Okay? And we'll talk more about that later on in this semester. And then if any of you take Foods 2 or Culinary Arts with me, we'll talk about more of that then as well. Okay? Talk about how important having patience is and how important following the recipe is. The next recipe we're gonna be making in this class is a chocolate chip cookie recipe. And we're gonna talk more about how important measurements are. Like I said, that's gonna be our next unit. Right now we're still talking about food safety and sanitation, but measurements is gonna be our very next unit. We're gonna talk about what will happen if you don't measure things out the way you should. Or if you don't use the right measuring equipment to measure everything. So, my butter is almost melted all the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add my marshmallows. Start getting those melted down. Like I said, we're gonna use this entire package of marshmallows. And we want all of this, like I said, to be on that medium heat so they slowly start to melt. Okay, so right now I'm just kind of coating my marshmallows in all that butter. It's gonna help them get melted a little bit faster. The smaller your marshmallows, the quicker that they'll melt. These are already starting to kind of stick together. If any of you can kind of see that, they're already starting to melt down a little bit. They're already starting to stick together. It's great. Okay. While these are melting down, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to start measuring out. I'm going to keep stirring things every so often to make sure they don't stick or burn to my pan. But I'm going to go ahead and start measuring out my Rice Krispie cereal. So for this recipe, I need 6 cups of Rice Krispies. There are 2 different kinds of measuring cups. There's measuring cups that look like this with a handle and kind of a little pour spout, and measuring cups that look like this. This is a liquid measuring cup. Okay, the ones with the pour spout, these are the liquid measuring cups. You find them that they're glass or that they're plastic. These are used for milk, water, oil, any sort of liquid ingredient that you might have. Measuring cups that look like this are for dry ingredients. So ones that aren't liquid, they don't flow, okay? So these are used for flour, for sugar, or in this case, our Rice Krispies. So we'll talk more about this, like I said, next week, but this is a dry measuring cup. This is the kind of measuring cup that you need to use to measure out your Rice Krispie treats, your Rice Krispie cereal. So, I am gonna go ahead, I'm gonna take these Rice Krispies out of the box. It's gonna be a little bit easier for me to handle. I'm gonna pour these in my measuring cup over the bowl and do my best to get it right about at the top of the line without going over. The nice thing about this recipe is that if you do add a little too much of something or too little of something, this recipe is very forgiving. Okay, this is a great first recipe because it's pretty challenging to mess up. And as you can see, I'm not doing a very good job pouring. I'll do a much better job when we talk about our measurement unit. Okay, so I've got 3 cups of Rice Krispies right there. I need 6 in total, but I'm gonna start off with 3. My marshmallows are getting nice and melted. You guys can see that? Getting nice and melted, they're sticking together. I'm wanting to get these finished melting down. Wonderful, wonderful. Looking great. So like I said, I've got 3 cups measured here. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can measure a couple more. So I get these all ready. There we go. 3. Nice and level. 4, 5, 6. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. All right, we can see our marshmallows. Almost ready. We're getting there. And because we melted these nice and slow, and we were really patient and took our time, our marshmallows, we don't have any burnt edges, right? There's no browning going on. Our marshmallows aren't like really solid. They're a nice melty mass. But as you can see, these are really, really sticky. Okay. What we want is we want to wait till we don't see any kind of marshmallow lumps anymore. We want pretty much all of those melted. If you choose to make these using a microwave instead of your stovetop, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to melt your butter, you're going to put your butter and your marshmallows together in a microwave safe bowl. And you're going to pop them in the microwave, stirring them every so often to make sure that they get nice and melted. Make sure there's no lumps in them before you start adding your Rice Krispies. Okay. So if you look, pretty much all those lumps are gone. That's probably good for us to start adding our Rice Krispies. So we're gonna start pouring our Rice Krispies. Let me see. We're gonna add our 3 cups of Rice Krispies and stir, and then add the remaining Rice Krispies that we have. Okay, while I do this, I'm gonna keep this on just a low heat to make sure that our marshmallows don't start to solidify. Once you take these off the heat, they're gonna start setting up, and we don't want them to set up just yet. So, let's see what our Rice Krispies look like. Get these nice and coated. At this point in time, you want to start working kind of quickly, okay? It's going to get harder and harder for these Rice Krispies. Goodness. It's going to get harder and harder to stir these Rice Krispies, and so you want to work quickly to make sure that all of them get coated really well. So we're going to go ahead. put half of them in before. I'm putting the other half now. Getting them nice and mixed up together. This is what this looks like. Doing my best to get them all coated the best I can. If I have a spot that's not coated very well, it's not gonna stick together. They're gonna get kind of dried out. They're not gonna be very flavorful like we want them to be. So. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay. At this point in time, it looks like they're pretty much all coated. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn that heat off entirely. They're all nice and coated. And I am going to quickly put these into my pan. If I sit here and wait for a little while, these Rice Krispies are gonna start to set up, and then I'm gonna have this big mess in my pot over here. So what I'm gonna do, I've got my pan that I've already pre-sprayed. I'm gonna do my best to pour all of these in here. Okay. The larger the pan, the easier it is to pour all these in here. So, with my spoon, I'm then gonna go ahead and press these down. And as these Rice Krispies start to cool off, these will kind of start to solidify where I can cut them into my squares that a lot of us are familiar with for our Rice Krispie treats. Like I said, these are still very hot, very sticky. Okay, at this point in time, it looks like these are all pretty much pushed down like they should be. However, I still have a lot of Rice Krispie left on my spoon. So what I'm gonna do to make sure everything's nice and flat and stuck together like it needs to be, and to get all these Rice Krispies off my spoon, I'm gonna take my hands and I'm either gonna coat them in that butter that you used before, or I'm gonna take my non-stick cooking spray and spray my hands to help make sure the marshmallow doesn't stick to my hands. Okay? Get a little on my hands, rub them back and forth. Okay? These Rice Krispies, these marshmallows are still gonna be kind of hot, so you're gonna like I said, once again, try to work quickly and do your best to not burn yourself. They should have cooled down enough by this point that it should be just hot to the touch, not so hot that you can't touch them, but just warm enough that they're kind of warm on your hands. So like I said, they were pretty together before. We're gonna go ahead, finish pushing them all together now. Make sure they're all nice and one uniform square like we like. And then if you wanted to, this would be a great point in time where you could add some chocolate chips to these or drizzle some chocolate on top. I've seen lots of people do that where they take a candy bar and just like melt the candy bar over the top. We're not gonna do that. We're just making classic Rice Krispies. But if you wanted to drizzle some chocolate on top or put some chocolate chips in there, you're more than welcome to. Now would be the time to do that. But at this point in time, I'm gonna go ahead and let them set up for at least 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'll be able to cut into them, and they'll stay into a nice square shape like I'd like. Okay? And as I mentioned, this is the part where my hands are really sticky once again. I'm gonna practice my lovely little hand washing procedures, where once more, water as hot as I can possibly stand it. Okay, get them nice and wet. Get my soap, lather my hands in soap in between my fingers, scrubbing for at least 20 seconds, singing the happy birthday song in my head twice, scrubbing my nails, getting the backs of my hands, palms of my hands, my wrists. Whew. So hot as I possibly can stand. That got really hot on me. Get them rinsed off, and then drying them off with a towel. Okay? Like I said, I hope you guys really enjoy this recipe. This is a great easy first recipe to start off with. And the next recipe we're gonna be making is our homemade chocolate chip cookies, and we're gonna talk about our measurements and our measurement techniques later. So this is what they look like so far. And I'll go through and I'll cut them into the sizes that I want later. Okay? Hope you guys enjoy.